Afternoon, and welcome to the 2022 Connecticut Book Awards. It's so great to have everybody in person again, right? To see everybody face to face and seeing new faces and familiar faces. And so thank you for coming. My name is Lisa Comstock. I'm the director of the Connecticut Center for the Book, and I'm glad to see such a great turnout. I think there's probably more still coming, finding parking places. And I hope you are as excited as I am today. Before we dig in, just a couple of light housekeeping items. Please mute your cell phones. Restrooms are out of the doors you entered and down the hallway to the right. And there will be a book signing after the awards conclude, along with a light reception. Riverbend Bookshop is on hand with copies of books. Obviously, you know that already, but just to remind you. So I say this every year, but it bears repeating every year. I am grateful and humbled by the many people who have given so generously of their time and experience, but I especially want to thank the category judges who spend hours of time reading all of the submissions and participating in thoughtful discussion. I want to thank my Connecticut Humanities colleagues for their patience with me over the past 10 months. And I thank you for your support. As always, thanks are given to readers like you. Without you and the value you place on literature, we couldn't do this at all. Many thanks go to Susie Staubach, ceramic artist and owner of the Willow Tree Pottery, who each year creates the lovely and unique book awards. Thanks goes to Hartford Public Library for hosting us today. And thanks go to our bookseller today as well. Thank you. And thanks go to the writers who've submitted their work. We are honored and proud to bring you the Connecticut Book Awards and to recognize literature produced by people with roots in Connecticut who tell great Connecticut stories. Now I'd like to welcome Jason Mancini, Executive Director of Connecticut Humanities. Jason came to Connecticut
Thanks, Lisa. It's great to be here. Welcome to all of you. It's so nice to be in shared space and seeing people in 3 dimensions. It's been too long. It's great to be back at the Hartford Public Library. I think we were here 3 years ago for the last book awards in person. It's a wonderful facility and glad we can all sort of enjoy this space. Like Lisa, I'm excited to be here to celebrate the authors and their accomplishments this year. Connecticut Humanities works hard to support and cultivate the literary and literature community across Connecticut, and I'm really grateful to Lisa for her leadership in this. She's the glue that makes all of this work. And she's always sort of rattling off some really interesting and innovative ideas on how we can really sort of connect our communities around literature. So stay tuned. We hope to be doing more of that as we move forward. I'm going to make one quick plug in my time up here for all of you to keep an eye on our nation's founding on July 4th, 2026, America 250. We're going to be shifting a lot of our energy in that direction. And while this is often a space for acknowledging our history, I think it's also an opportunity to engage the literary community, as well as the thinking around imagining a better future for this nation. So please be in touch with us, share your ideas. We want to engage around topics. They matter to us, they matter to our state, they matter to the nation and the world. Finally, I just want to thank, again, Lisa, our staff, our board, the Center for the Book judges, and to all of you, enjoy the show.
Now, I'd like to introduce you to our MC for the evening. Antoinette Brimbell, Connecticut's 8th State Poet Laureate, is the author of 3 full-length poetry collections: These Women You Gave Me, Icarus in Love, and Psalm of the Sunflower. She is a Cave Canem Foundation Fellow, and an alumna of Voices of Our Nation's Arts Foundation. Her poetry has appeared in various journals, magazines, textbooks, and anthologies, including V&A, 44 on 44, 44 African American Writer, and the 44th President of the United States, Not a Muse, and has appeared in Poetry Magazine and Poem a Day. Additionally, Brimbell has published critical work, most notably essays, Living Behind the Numbers, a statistic muses about her life, National Association of African American Studies monograph series, The Myopic Eye and Alice Walker's Flowers, Critical Insights, Alice Walker's Salem Press, and Juxtaposed Dichotomies, the Idealized White Suburban Pastoral, the Surrealist Tableau of Black Poverty, and the Women in Between, The Whiskey of Our Discontent, Gwendolyn Brooks as Conscience and Change Agent, Haymarket Books. Take it away, Antoinette.
Well, this year's awards consist of 4 main categories: poetry, nonfiction, fiction, and young readers, which is broken into subcategories: picture book fiction and nonfiction, middle grade readers fiction and nonfiction, and young adult fiction and nonfiction. There are no nonfiction candidates for young readers this year, and no winner of the Spirit of Connecticut Award. Each category had a panel of 5 readers who reviewed each qualifying submission and based their decision on criteria appropriate to the category. The process is rigorous, and much consideration was taken with every title submitted. And now, on to the interesting part, the awards. Let me introduce you to our first presenter. Pat Mottola teaches creative writing at Southern Connecticut State University. She also teaches both art and poetry to senior citizens throughout Connecticut. Pat is president of the Connecticut State Society and served as editor of the Connecticut River Review 2012 to 2017. On a global scale, she mentors Afghan women writers living in Afghanistan and beyond. She is the author of 2 full-length collections of poetry. She was the recipient of the prestigious CSCU System-Wide Board of Regents Outstanding Teacher Award in 2019, as well as the J. Phillip Outstanding Teacher Award in 2020.
You made me sound so good. Thank you. It was a great honor to be one of the judges for the Connecticut Book Awards poetry category. I would first like to recognize the other judges. Margot Schilp teaches at Southern Connecticut State University and at Quinnipiac. She's the author of 4 volumes of poetry, all from Carnegie Mellon University Press, the most recent of which is After Swarm, which won the 2020 Connecticut Book Award in poetry. She lives in New Haven with her husband, poet Jeff Mock, and their 2 daughters, Paula and Leah. Sean Frederick Forbes is an assistant professor in residence in English and the director of the creative writing program at the University of Connecticut, Storrs campus. Providencia, his first book of poetry, was published in 2013 by Two Leaf Press. For 2020 to 2021, he was an Andrew Mellon Fellow at the Yukon Humanities Institute. He serves as the poetry editor for New Square, the official publication of the Sancho Panza Literary Society, for which he is a founding member. In 2017, he received first place in the Nutmeg Poetry Contest from the Connecticut Poetry Society. Bessie Reyna received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Connecticut Center for the Book for Poetry. She's a former opinion columnist for the Hartford Courant and a contributor to the Identidad Latina and ctlatinonews.com. Antoinette Brimbell. I know that Antoinette needs no further introduction. I've worked with her on numerous occasions, and I want you all to know what a pleasure it is to be a fellow poet of Antoinette. Her accomplishments speak for themselves, and I want to especially acknowledge her critical work. I want to congratulate her again on becoming Connecticut's 8th Poet Laureate. I'm going to just briefly explain the process. The judging process was so challenging, rigorous, and extremely enjoyable. The 5 judges read each of the entries, numerous times, and the books were ranked according to a specific set of criteria. Mastery of writing, the organization of the book, the style and voice, was it effective, appropriate, consistent? Did the poetic technique reinforce the theme? The impact, was it enlightening and original? And did it leave a long-lasting impression? Mechanics, was it skillful and consistent? And of course, the production quality, professionally designed and visual appealing. So, I'm going to announce the finalists in alphabetical order by their last name. And I want to say again that choosing one winner was very, very difficult. Taking Her Back by Christina Baptista. Christina was one of 85 people selected to sail aboard the Charles W. Morgan, the world's last remaining wooden whale ship. And I'm going to quote from the back cover of her book. Like the lines of rigging linking parts of a ship, the poems in Taking Her Back connect the past, present, and possible future through a lens of antiquity and personal nostalgia and a haunting space between them. The Glass Globe by Margaret Gibson. These poems are perfect examples of Margaret Gibson's knack for clarity, passion, and fearlessness in her writing. She makes the personal universal. And I lost my place. She makes the personal universal, and the reader is enriched by reading her words and sharing her world inside the glass globe. A Cluster of Noisy Planets by Charles Rafferty. He makes you fall in love with the prose poem. Each poem is intriguing and leaves a lasting impression, as Charles Rafferty's work is known to do. He never disappoints the reader. And this is a quote. He imagines interesting scenarios we can read ourselves into. And the finalist is Songs for a Solo Voice by James Whitley. He skillfully uses so many different styles and forms, the ghazal, calendel, ekphrasis, and his imagery sweeps the reader right into the moment. This is a quote from one of his poems that I loved. We all want to believe that once experienced, bliss will linger somehow, like the prodigal stars, forever able to share their brilliance. Gosh, so I would like to congratulate the winner of the 2022 Connecticut Book Award for Poetry, Margaret Gibson. And I just want to thank all the poets for their amazing contributions to Connecticut's literary landscape. Thank you so much.
Just one more thing to go. We are going to play some samples of some of the poetry from this group of poets.
The shoulders are the first to tell you your work is done, or your work is not done. When the stagger is caught in mid-rise because the wind plays tricks even though the sun is brighter than a Madonna, the arms and muscles just above the blades of narrow bone, slim and angled, almost burned by sun if only the skin was not such a swarth. That is the moment of reliance on how a body moves like a keel with so little leeway, yet so much power. Plugged with wood, stuffed with wood, rocking with wood, always. The stuff of a body is always a skeleton of nature, a true self, the listing beneath a weight almost too much to bear, almost too familiar.
And last we washed his body. Last we rolled it to one side of the bed, rocked it gently back. The long length of him settled now onto a clean sheet. Last I followed a crease on his forehead with my finger. Last his daughter washed his hair, massaging his scalp, sloshing the soapy water. Last his son sponged his shoulders, and I each finger. He had beautiful hands. Last his thighs, his knees, his shin bones. Last we washed his feet, their soles a smooth new silk, and I for the last time his genitals, still warm as a wood's earth nestle of wild orchid. His no breath now stayed sweet.
I counted the water towers, the active smokestacks. These were the breadcrumbs I thought would lead me back. Now I know it's possible to drive so far we forget why we left, that the journey continues even after the car breaks down. I used to think I had no message, but the message is me, bloodshot and hungry, spilled coffee down the front of my shirt. People of the future, gather round. I have traveled through ink to greet you.
Given the appropriate container, a whole lifetime can be preserved. An ancient beetle encased in a solemn glob of amber. A Cro-Magnon hunter trapped under ice. And here, a misplaced photograph I've yet to destroy. In it, we're feeding pigeons in Italy. Your dark hair wind-swept, your dark eyes shut. A perfect halo of Venetian sunlight framing your face.
This is so exciting. Okay. So we're going to move on to the fiction category. Jason Courtmanch has been at UConn for 28 of the last 36 years as an undergrad, a non-degree student, a doctoral student, an adjunct professor, and is now associate professor in residence. This is his third year as a Book Awards judge.
I'm going to age us both, but Margaret was my professor. My first year, my PhD program. No kidding. So I'd like to recognize the other fiction judges first. Stephen Fitzgerald is an instructor in residence at the Operations and Information Management Department at the University of Connecticut. Previously, he worked as a learning and development consultant at eVisions, as an adjunct professor at the University of Connecticut, and as a risk assurance professional at PwC, which I have no idea what that is. This is his first year as a Connecticut Book Awards judge. Iffy Michelle Jardine is the creator and founder of the Elm City Lit Fest, a celebration of literature, literary artists, and literary arts of the African diaspora. Ife is a writer of fiction and poetry and a playwright. She was born and raised in Connecticut and has lived in Brooklyn, New York, and Washington, D.C. And of course, in Eastern Connecticut, this is the only place where we have to say Brooklyn, New York, right? Keidra Taylor is a PhD student at the University of Connecticut and my former grad student. She specializes in children's and young adult literature, focusing on constructions of Black girlhood. Keidra is also founder and editor of Write on Black Girl, a magazine that serves as an archive of original poetry, short stories, memoir, photography, and art created by Black elementary, secondary, and undergraduate students who identify as girls, female, femme, or non-binary folks. This is her first year as a Connecticut Book Awards judge. Maritza Vargas is a graduate of Eastern Connecticut State University and is currently head of circulation at the Public Library of New London, where she has worked for 11 years. This is her first year as a Connecticut Book Awards judge. So we, like everybody else, spent the summer reading. There were 39 novels, so that was a lot of reading. We shared our top 5, and they were remarkably similar, which was a relief. We discussed and debated the merits of each and then selected our winner. So let me announce the finalists. Or do we do finalists first and then the video? Okay. Again, this is in alpha order by last name. The Family Plot by Megan Collins. All 5 judges enjoyed this novel a great deal. I remarked that it reminded me a little of American Horror Story, season 1. I hope that's a compliment. It is to me. Justine by Forsyth Harmon, a short, pleasantly odd, very dark coming-of-age story. 9 Lupine Road by Eric Lehman, a wonderfully provocative journey. Goliath by Tochi Onyebuchi, a fascinating tour de force of a novel. And the Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, I hope I pronounced that correctly, a creative and engaging adventure.
My parents named me Dahlia, after the Black Dahlia, that actress whose body was cleaved in half, left in grass as sharp as scalpels, a permanent smile sliced onto her face. And when I first learned her story at 4 years old, I assumed a knife would one day carve me up. My namesake was part of me, my future doomed by her violent death. That meant my oldest brother, Charlie, who had escaped the Lindbergh baby's fate by living past age 2, would still be abducted someday. My sister, Tate, would follow in her own namesake's footsteps, become a movie star, and then become a body in a pool of blood. And my twin brother Andy, named for Lizzie Borden's father, I was sure his head was destined for the axe.
I first saw her on the other side of the conveyor belt. She was so tall and thin she looked almost two-dimensional, her long fingers fluttering over the cash register keys, her long arms passing my Trident sugar-free gum and Diet Coke over the sensor. Her own can of Diet Coke sweated a ring on the countertop beside her. Her face was long too, and her skin was so pale it was bluish like skim milk and transparent in places, veins visible at the temples. Her complexion created an unsettling contrast with her hair, which was cut into a chin-length, pitch-black bob. She pulled at the ends of it with those long white fingers, shoving the hair into her mouth, wide and protruding, as though closed around the rind of an orange slice. But her eyebrows were so light they were almost non-existent, and I could see then that her inch-long roots were an ashy color, dull as dishwater. Most girls would have highlighted hair that color, made it blonder, but Justine went dark. There was something spooky about the lighter roots. There was something spooky about Justine altogether. That's what the name tag attached to her red Stop and Shop apron said. Justine.
I recorded much of Rupert's story over 2 weeks in North Adams, Massachusetts, in a bookshop and several other places where he and I met. We were meeting for the first time since he left my mother before I was born. My mother kept no pictures, and so I had nothing to create a false memory. That was right of her to do. I might have liked to give you Rupert Plain's transcription, his actual words, but they are a jumbled mess, hours and hours of rambling memories and incredible lies. No one could stand to listen to his voice for long, even though I spent 2 weeks doing just that. Let me show you what I mean.
Before his flight to Earth, they had warned Jonathan about the gangs. Even at the Stamford station where his shuttle had docked, even on the bullet train that spirited him north past brick apartment buildings and houses with gables and turrets, manicured lawns, circular drives, bay windows, even past the shorefront homes of South Norwalk, with sailboats parked on the sand or tethered to metal docks, fashioned to look as though they were made out of peeling wood, made to look as though they had been there forever. Past the kayaks and the fountains and the parks populated by poplars and willow trees, they warned him about the gangs.
In the beginning. A book must start somewhere. One brave letter must volunteer to go first, laying itself on the line in an act of faith, from which a word takes heart and follows, drawing a sentence into its wake. From there, a paragraph amasses, and soon a page, and the book is on its way, finding a voice, calling itself into being. A book must start somewhere, and this one starts here.
And the winner of the 2022 Connecticut Book Award for Fiction is Tochi Onyebuchi. Margaret said, try to look happy, would you? Thank you, everyone, for all your contributions to Connecticut's literary landscape.
It's so much fun for me from here because everyone's face is amazing. They're so startled, and I'm like, ah! So, are you going to do the, yeah, okay, great. So we're going to move on to nonfiction. Let's see, here we go. Ramin Ganeshram is both an award-winning journalist and historian who is currently the executive director of the Westport Museum for History and Culture, formerly Westport Historical Society in Westport, Connecticut. Ganeshram's area of study is the colonial era African American history, particularly focused on the enslaved African Americans and mixed race people. She is a Connecticut Humanities Board member.
Thank you so much. I'd like to begin by introducing the judges, telling you a little bit about them for the nonfiction category of the Connecticut Book Award. Daisy Abreu is an arts administrator, educator, editor, and writer living and working in New Haven, Connecticut. She has taught creative writing at the Schubert Theater and Art Summer Camp and at Co-op Arts and Humanities High School, and held positions on the board of directors of the Arts Council of Greater New Haven and the Institute Library. Thank you for your service, Daisy. Tom Piezzo received his master's in library and information science from the Palmer School at Long Island University and has worked in New York City and in Connecticut since 1993. He is presently the director of the Brainerd Memorial Library in Haddam and is the immediate past president of the Connecticut Library Association. Thank you, Tom, for reading many, 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 many books, as I remember well. All of them great. Dr. Nicholas F. Bellantoni serves as Emeritus State Archaeologist with the Connecticut State Museum of Natural History at the University of Connecticut. He received his doctorate in anthropology from UConn in 1987 and was shortly thereafter appointed state archaeologist. He also serves as adjunct associate research professor in the Department of Anthropology at UConn and is a former president of the Archaeological Society of Connecticut and National Association of State Archaeologists. Thanks, Nick. John D. Barron is a retired museum and public educator dedicated to making history come alive by using material cultural explorations to explore social history, most recently focused on minority populations in Eastern Connecticut. It's a pleasure to serve with you, John, on this committee. So I'm going to announce the finalists in alphabetical order, tell you a little bit about these books. The first is Seeing Ghosts by Kat Chow. This was a moving narrative about how a family copes with the death of their mother, told through the author's eyes as a teenager. Kat Chow deftly weaves the immigrant experience and ideas of belonging and the American dream through a poignant and often painful examination of how the death of a parent irrevocably changes one's world forever. Broke in America by Joanne Goldblum and Colleen Shaddux. This exhaustively researched book offers a fine-tuned perspective of poverty in the United States, how it's created and how it impacts not just those who live with it, but those who live around it. The book offers practical and actionable thoughts on how the individual can work both in and around established systems to help end poverty in this, the richest country in the world. Squirrel Hill by Mark Oppenheimer. In October of 2017, a domestic terrorist killed 11 Jews worshiping at the Tree of Life Synagogue in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood of Pittsburgh. Told against the backdrop of violence and politics in America, in examining this horrific event and its aftermath, the author chooses not to examine the criminal and his crime, but the stories of a wide variety of people inside and outside of this community. Interviewing both Jews and Gentiles, survivors and witnesses, activists and historians, Oppenheimer offers a meditation on how to understand the nature of resilience that is the hallmark of how Squirrel Hill grew and moved forward from this horrific crime. Correctional by Ravi Shankar. In Correctional, Ravi Shankar recounts his fall from grace as a poet and respected writing professor to an inmate at one of Connecticut's correctional facilities when a series of poor choices, peculiar happenstance, butts up against the systemic racism of the American justice system. Through a personal lens that also examines ideas of othering, race, color, and immigrancy, Shankar turns a hard eye on both himself and the system in this well-written page-turner. And Piglet, the unexpected story of a deaf, blind, pink puppy and his family. Melissa Shapiro in Piglet, a veterinarian and animal rescuer, recounts how a deaf-blind rescue puppy quickly went from another rescue to an integral part of her family, and whose escapades made him a social media star that offered hope around the power of resilience to his many fans.
Like many of the ghost stories I've grown up with, this one needs to start with a death. So let me begin with this. The first time you faced a dead body, you were a little girl. You told me this when I was 8. I perched on your lap.
We were at the kitchen table on a weekend afternoon with plates of mostly eaten chung fun and bowls lined with the sticky residue of juk clustered in front of us. Caroline and Steph started to clear the table, chattering about whatever concerned high schoolers. Daddy retreated to the family room. I don't know how you settled on this topic.
If we want to address poverty, to understand and end it once and for all, we have to see it first. And that presents a challenge for many of us. Poverty has been largely invisible during the lifetimes of most U.S. Americans who are not themselves poor. That is changing. As poverty becomes more common, we will either confront it or become a nation resigned to overwhelming economic inequality.
When did it begin, this hatred of Jews? Some would say that all hatred began in the Garden of Eden, when the serpent brought evil into the world. Or at the Tower of Babel, when God punished humans for their hubris by destroying their common tongue, making them strangers to one another. Others would point to the New Testament, which, as uncomfortable as it is to admit today, does seem to lay the death of Jesus at the feet of treacherous Jews. Or we can blame the early theologians in the centuries after Jesus, who said things like, the Jewish people were driven by their drunkenness and plumpness to the ultimate evil. They kicked about, they failed to accept the yoke of Christ, nor did they pull the plow of his teachings.
We arrive at Hartford Correctional Center and are led up a ramp and into a brightly lit hallway dotted with cells, the faces of shadowy men pressing up against them. I try to shift the ordeal into an aesthetic experience, an act of immersion journalism, but I fail. Waiting on another length of bench to be unshackled, I'm panicked and exhausted, barely holding it together. Once we're uncuffed, we're thrust into a bullpen filled with men in no mood to talk. My head swims in a fog of exhausted unknowing. After a long while, I'm called forward, identified, fingerprinted, photographed, and like part of a cattle herd, stored in another bullpen. Then I'm told to strip, to trade my laceless shoes for a pair of black martial art style slippers, which I learned were called Jackie Chan's or Skippy's.
There is very little I've forgotten about the winter day in early 2017 when I drove the 25 minutes or so from our house in Westport up I-95 to Milford, Connecticut, to the local Petco, where a pet adoption event was underway and where I'd promised to arrive about 10:30 in the morning. Compared to how Saturdays usually go in my line of work as a house call veterinarian, my list of concerns for the day was short and the schedule of things to do was relatively light. That may be exaggerating. Let's just say, as a mom of 6 dogs, 4 birds, and 3 human kids, ages 17 to 22, whose well-being I tracked on a consistent basis, I recall greeting the day with an unusual sense of calm.
And the winner for the 2022 Connecticut Book Award for Nonfiction is Squirrel Hill by Mark Oppenheimer.
How do you want us?
I think I want you.
With the black.
Beach, beach.
So, moving on to young readers. Jean Reynolds was a children's book editorial, director, and publisher for many years, and was the founder of the Mill Brooks Press and Roaring Book Press. During her terms as the president of the Children's Book Council, she was an avid promoter of the industry. She has served on the Connecticut Board of Governors, excuse me, for higher education, as well as the Board of Trustees of the CT Humanities.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being part of these Connecticut Book Awards ceremonies. I hope your reading lists have been growing as fast as mine, as we have been tantalized by our talented Connecticut authors. The young readers' books we'll hear about in this segment probably don't have much of a chance of making it to your personal reading lists, but they can be wonderful additions to your holiday gift lists. The following professional children's book lovers made up our Young Readers Award Committee. Kim Powell has been working in libraries for over 13 years and specializes in youth services. She is currently the Children Young Adult Consultant with the Connecticut State Library in the Division of Library Development. Melissa Tom has been in education for 20 years. The first 12 years were spent as a classroom teacher. Currently, she is a middle school teacher librarian in West Hartford. Melissa is a passionate educator who believes that teaching and learning should be joyful. This is her third year as a Connecticut Book Awards judge. Althea Carr has been an avid reader her entire life. Although retired from the classroom, she continues to advocate for teachers and students through her work with the Connecticut Education Association and supports the well-being of others, working with the Coalition on Diversity and Equity. Stephanie Rush is a youth librarian at Russell Library and an avid reader. This was her first year as a Book Awards judge. Now, our colleagues in the adult categories are able to work within specific literary genres, fiction, nonfiction, poetry. Our work is a little more complicated because children, and thus their books, are tailored for several different age groups and reading abilities. Therefore, we have 3 different age categories, and within each one, we have awards for fiction and nonfiction. So we'll begin with the Young Readers Picture Book Fiction category, in which we have 2 finalists. Soul Food Sunday by Winsome Hudson Bingham and illustrated by C.G. Ezra is a mouth-watering story that invites readers into a Black family's rollicking Sunday dinner. The other finalist in the category is 3 Pockets Full, a story of love, family, and tradition, written and illustrated by Cindy Rodriguez. Featuring bold digital illustrations, this debut picture book is a story about the feelings associated with family tradition and family change. Food Sunday. We'll worry about congratulations. Wonderful book. think we may have, we'll just do this for the picture and make it trade. Thank you. It is wonderful that you're getting your picture taken over there next to the sun. And now we move to the Young Readers Picture Book Nonfiction category. Again, we have two finalists. Bebe Goes Home, a Panda Story by Cheryl Bardot, paints a vivid picture of global conservation efforts and international collaborations through the story of one irresistible and beloved Black and white ambassador. The photos alone will make anyone love Bebe. You will be introduced in a minute. And our other finalist, Walrus Song by Janet Lawler, illustrated by Timothy Basil Ehring, may actually be one to add to your own book list. A lyrical narrative and vibrant illustrations rendered in charcoal and acrylic will please a range of audiences, from squirmy toddlers enticed by the rhymes to would-be marine biologists. Walrus Song. Congratulations. It's a wonderful book. I'm going to give you this to pose over there. Note now that we are changing age groups as we turn to the Young Readers Middle Grade Fiction category. For those of you who are looking at these books as possible gifts, middle grade is broadly considered ages 8 through 12. The first of our finalists, and we have 3 finalists in this category, and the first one is loosely based on the life of the author's great-great-grandmother, View from Pagoda Hill by Michaela McColl. It will bring tears to readers' eyes as they follow the steps of a young Chinese girl who, upon arrival in America, faces biases and racism on a daily basis. The second of our finalists is The Flyers by Beth Turley. It's a short, sweet tale of expanding horizons and nurturing friendships as 4 7th grade girls meet in the big city to be guest editors on a teen magazine. And the third finalist book, To Tell You the Truth by Beth Vrabel, is told in beautiful, dreamy prose, accented with Southern drawls. The book imparts a gentle wisdom on friendship and family, grief and grace. but it shines in how it stresses the beauty and importance of stories, both spoken and silent. The Connecticut Book Award in the Young Readers Middle Grade Fiction category. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. My apologies. That's the only place we had three. Threw me off. The winner of the Connecticut Book Award in the Young Readers Middle Grade Fiction category is To Tell You the Truth by Beth Grable. It is such a beautiful book. Thank you. That's so wonderful. Now, we have two finalists in our Young Readers Middle Grade Nonfiction category. The first finalist is called Fairy Tale Science by Sarah Albee, who is a previous winner of the Connecticut Book Award. Young scientists interested in STEM topics can explore chemistry, physics, and biology by performing hands-on experiments based on classic stories. And I can't resist giving you a couple of examples. Read Cinderella, and then determine if a glass slipper can withstand an evening of ballroom dancing. Or read Rapunzel, and then figure out if human hair could really support a prince's climb. And Robomotion, Robots That Move Like Animals by Linda Zajac is the other middle grade nonfiction finalist. Biomimicry, the practice of using nature as a guide to create human-made designs, is the focus of this engaging exploration into the world of robotics. Stunning, colorful photographs of animals in nature are paired with images of robots engineered to mimic the animal's unique qualities. And the winner of the middle grade nonfiction category is Fairy Tale Science by Sarah Albee. Hi. Congratulations, it's nice to see you again. Okay, these are all muddled up, so just you can all exchange them with each other later. Wait to get your picture. Now, our final category is young adult fiction, and we have two nominees, The Secret Life of Kitty Granger by J.D. Falkson and Mercury Boys by Chandra Prasad. The heroine of The Secret Life of Kitty Granger is not an ordinary 16-year-old. She can find a secret door in a heartbeat and can solve any puzzle in an instant. Many of her unusual behaviors, such as an obsession with patterns, are often exhibited by those diagnosed with autism. Yet some of these traits lend themselves quite well to the spy business. Readers will learn to love Kitty, as her keen eye for detail is key to thwart a conspiracy rooted in the highest levels of British government. It's a rip-roaring spy adventure led by a most unusual hero. And our other nominee is Mercury Boys. And in this book, history collides with the modern world when a group of high school girls form a secret society after discovering they can communicate with boys from the past. The resulting story is a powerful look at female desire, jealousy, and the shifting lines between friendship and rivalry. The winner of the Young Adult Fiction Connecticut Book Award is The Secret Life of Kitty Granger. And our winner is not with us today, so we will conclude with, I think his books are out there and available. You can at least see a picture of him, right, in the back cover. So congratulations to our Young Readers winners. You have challenged, entertained, and inspired our committee, and your books will do the same for our state's young readers.
Our day is nearly ending, but I want to just make an announcement about the Spirit of Connecticut category. We want to honor and acknowledge All Girls as an honorable mention the book is by Emily Layden, and it's set in a fictional prep school Atwater in Litchfield Hills of Connecticut. And it's a perceptive coming of age novel that follows 9 young women as they navigate their ambitions and fears, all pitched against the backdrop of a scandal the administration wants silenced. It's a recommended read. It's not a winner this year, but it is an honorable mention. So I did want to let you know about that. So we're pretty much wrapped up today. Isn't that good, right? We can all have snacks. So I did want to make an announcement too that we are having writing workshops. The Connecticut Center for the Book is hosting some writing workshops that begin actually this Thursday as virtual type things. And I can certainly direct you to ctbook.org to get to the landing page of our site and learn a little bit more about those writing workshops. I just wanted to get that to you. The first one is being led by Susan Schoenberger. And again, it starts this Thursday. It's virtual and it's begin at 7 o'clock. And there will be 3 more that follow that as well for different genres and categories of writing. So I did want to let you know about that. So thank you. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for attending this year's Book Awards. And let's celebrate and mingle and have a bite to eat and books and get them signed by the authors who are present here today. Thank you.